First, a word from our sponsor, The Tomb of Gygax by Gooey Cube, an adventure homage and campaign setting honoring Gary Gygax, brought to you by Luke Gygax and publisher Alphinius Goo. The Tomb is a brutal, grim, dark dungeon crawl in the classic old school style, and the campaign setting completely unique, featuring a number of old school luminaries as NPCs that you can encounter and interact with. The ghost of Gary Gygax, Luke Gygax and his family, Peter Ackes, Mike Carr, Larry Elmore, Ed Greenwood, Errol Otis, plus me, Dan the Didactic. And we also contributed writing to this project. And if you've never seen them, Gooey Cube products are first rate. Here's a copy of their last box set, The Darkest Dream. Comes in a sturdy cardboard box with reward cards, magic item cards, NPC cards. These books are spiral bound so they lay flat on your table, slick pages, and first-rate art made by humans. Pledge early and you get a ton of extra stuff. Link below.
Deathbringer here. Subscribe to the channel and sign up for the Deathbringer RPG newsletter at the link below.
Welcome to Dungeon Craft. I'm Professor Dungeon Master, and my guests here today are Alphinius Goo, the founder of Gooey Cube, and Luke Gygax, the son of Gary Gygax. And today we are talking about the actual house rules of Gary Gygax Sr. So I did a video a few years ago called The Gygax Code, The Secret House Rules of Gary Gygax, and it was based on one of my patrons said, I have these rules. I think they might be Gary Gygax. Can you confirm this? And I had a video about it. And got a lot of views and a lot of people weighed in on it. And Luke, you said, no, these are not his house rules. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So my first question is, what were your father's house rules, if any?
Thank you for having me. Good to be here, and sorry for raining on that comment there a couple of years ago or whatever that was when I made that. But I read through it, and as I recall, some of the things didn't make sense. So he wrote a lot of rules for Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, is generally what we played first edition. And some of those were to appeal to people who were in his gaming group, especially in the 70s, who were a lot of war gamers. So you'll see there's weapon speed factors and adjustments for various types of weapons versus armor. You know, a pick or something like that or a mace would be better against plate mail, whereas a slashing weapon would not do as well. Things of that nature. So he kind of factored in those adjustments. That's a lot of math. That was not how we played. That would slow down gameplay quite a bit. So we didn't use weapon speed factors or any of that. It was a straight roll your 20-sider, add any bonuses that you have, and then it's either a hit or not. Roll the damage and go on about your business. He didn't use critical hits. He found, if you used critical hits, I think what we found is the advantage goes to the dungeon master, because oftentimes they're rolling more dice than the players are. If you have a horde of kobolds coming at you, you may think, great, it's a bunch of kobolds. As a DM, I got lucky. I rolled a couple 20s. I go to a critical hit table, and suddenly, something awful has happened. You've lost a limb or whatever the case may be. So it can be quite dangerous. So we didn't use those. There wasn't a lot of house rules. I think what we had for initiative was group initiative on a D6. A 1 or a 2 would be slightly surprised or totally surprised on initial contact. He would use, if you were a caster, you would have to look at your segments, how many segments your spell was, and that could slow down where you fell in the initiative. Obviously, back in the day, if you were a spellcaster and you took damage during casting, your spell was lost. So you would have to scratch that off of your sheet. So it was pretty important. And I guess another given that I didn't state here is before you rolled initiative, you would have a declaration phase. What are you doing this round? What are you planning on doing? Oh, I'm going to attack with a melee weapon. I'm going to, move here. I'm going to cast a spell, right? So you couldn't say roll initiative, win initiative, and say, yes, I'm going to cast a spell. No. You had to declare beforehand and take that risk. I'm going to cast a spell, and therefore, it could be bad news to you. That made certain types of magic items more valuable, right? Or certain spells more valuable. If you cast a mirror image, and then you could cast spells with much less chance of losing that spell. Or a cloak of displacement would be a very valuable item for a spellcaster because of that automatic miss initially, right? So those are a couple of the rules or a couple of the tidbits that stand out. But I'm happy to answer any specific questions that you have.
So, Professor, if I could just interject, I want to ask just one question, if it is okay.
Yeah,
Luke,
it's fine.
tell the truth. Was your dad a killer GM?
No, I would say no, he wasn't. He could be. He let the dice fall where they may, for the most part. I suspect that he may have had leniency on me at one point in time, and it was in the Lost Caverns. Well, he did at one point. With my first character, 10th level Ranger, I begged him to play. Dad, let's play a game. Let's play a game. I'd be surprised if I was more than 11 years old. I think I was younger, 10. This is my first character I've played since 4 years old, right? So I've gone through the Giants and the Drow and everything with Otis the Ranger. So we played. He got a module, and I played with my sister and I, Heidi. He took me to the Tomb of Horrors at that age, and not much of a surprise there. No spoiler alert. I know the module's only been out for a few decades here, but if you haven't read it, anyway, I went through one of the misty portals that teleports all of your physical possessions to the end to a Sararex treasure room, right? And you are transported to the beginning, sans any of your equipment, so you're naked and unafraid. I continued adventuring very foolishly, and I found my way into a room with 3 levers, and I pushed the levers up, as I recall, and that opens up a pit that drops you 100 feet down. Of course, no, I had nothing, so I had no spells. I was rangers. I plummeted. I had over 100 hit points. We rolled the damage. I survived, but that was the last time I played that character. I was at the bottom of the pit, no equipment, no way to get out. So that was pretty harsh. So was he a killer DM? Well, he could be hard, right? If you made maybe some bad decisions, right? Then I was playing Melf, and I was going through the Lost Caverns of Sajkamp, probably my favorite module of all time. I played every encounter through there. I play tested it with my dad. So Melf was a lower level fighter magic use at the time, and I had a henchman, which is an interesting story, named Biff, who was a halfling fighter thief. And I ran into a Gorgamira. So Gorgamira was a new creature that was introduced in that module, and I failed my saving throw versus its breath weapon. So I don't know if this is a rule he used. I think it's a rule that's in the book. If you fail your breath weapon save, you have to roll a saving throw for all of your equipment. So I had to go down my sheet every time I failed a fireball save or whatever the case may be, and roll for all of my equipment. And of course, we're less concerned about things like a backpack, although that you have to, how are you going to carry your things on, etc. This one, what I remember is I rolled a 2 for my cloak of displacement. I lost my cloak of displacement. That was a prized possession, and I was enraged as a young player. And I said, "That's it. It's this Gorgamir or me. I'm not running." I was down to 7 hit points, I think, for 4 rounds of combat. And this thing gets like 5 attacks, right? As I remember. Can't be 100% sure, but I think it's 4 or 5 attacks. I survived and hit it twice and was able to kill it. Now, what are the chances mathematically that it missed me with all those attacks for 4 rounds? So he may have relented. So he never said that. He didn't show me his dice rolls, but my character survived that. Was it really good fortune? Or was it the DM saying, you know what, let's make this a heroic moment. He's down to the last few hit points. Now, every time, again, no spoilers here, Sajkamp from the 80s as well, probably it's an excellent adventure. I'd suggest you play it. But you get teleported around, which is a classic old school thing, and you have to find your way around. So every time I'd get teleported, I have to get out a fresh piece of paper and start mapping and try to figure out where it was. Well, eventually you enter into this large cavern, you see the skeleton of a Gorgamira, Displacer Coat, Ashes, and Elven Tears. It's like, oh, I know where I'm at. So that was a handy marker inside. So there you go. I would say it depended. He was a firm GM, which is important. I think if there's not tension in the game, why play it, right? If we're heroes, there has to be risk in any story. There has to be something that you're facing that you have to overcome. And if it's easy, that's not an interesting story, and I don't think it's engaging. But if you have to use ingenuity, if you have to really decide when you're going to expend your precious resources and need a little bit of luck, I think that makes the story all the more exciting. You build that crescendo, and then you talk about it with your friends later and go, man, do you remember that adventure where we did this? That was so close. That's a good story.
If you're enjoying this type of content, check out my video, The Demon Tailor, about the hunt for a serial killer. All the minis, models, and GM tips this channel is known for, and you can click on it at the end of this video. On with the show. Did your dad have a favorite module? My patrons really want to know that. Did he have a favorite one?
You know, none that he really shared with me as a favorite. I know later in life, he enjoyed writing. The Hermit was one, just because it was a different type of module. But I'll tell you what, I think as an author or designer, oftentimes you get excited about your current project because you need to be excited about your current project because that's where your focus is. I remember him talking about Hall of Pains and how excited he was when he was writing Gord the Rogue. Yeah, I would read the pages as they came fresh off his typewriter back in those days because he was a late convert to computers. So he loved just writing on an old typewriter. So I think, unfortunately, if I were to tell you, those would probably be my favorite modules that I played with him. So I don't know that he told me that he had a favorite. And I already gave you my favorite. Lost Caverns of Sodge Camp, I think, was just wonderful. And I would say maybe the most iconic series, maybe this is cheating because it's putting a whole bunch of them together. The Giants to Drow is a really great story arc. And it's so early on. Everyone says, well, that's sort of trite stuff. Okay, well, sure. But when these were written, essentially he was doing the tropes, right? They became tropes because they were so good and everybody played it, right? So the Giant series, introducing the idea of a storyline, having some bad guys that are unknown and introducing these new bad guys that people, hey, who are these? What are these? What's going on? Oh, they escaped and they're down underground. And then there's this whole new society of elves, evil elves. What? That's weird. I thought elves were supposed to be good. And the terrible demon queen of spiders, who's everybody hates spiders, right? That's pretty awful. And to give you an idea of the kind of GM, I'll tie this back to another question. I was so excited as Otis, and so all the other players were excited too, to get these wonderful drow magic items. They're like, yes, these were so hard to defeat these guys. They were really. And we get out, and of course, like, okay, you wake up in the morning and you're out. Oh no, all of your precious magic items have shriveled up. They don't look quite the same. They look faded and they almost kind of disintegrate as you touch them. And so he enjoyed that as well, being able to take away those precious magic items. Why was that? Was it because he was a bad guy and wanted to defeat players? If you asked me back then, I might be like, yes, that's right. No, again, it's part of the whole tension. Why are you adventuring, right? Why are you adventuring? It's so you can, maybe right some wrongs, gain power, stop the forces of woe in the world, right? Be a bastion for good. I can segue to another question, but I'm getting way off topic here for you. So favorite module, I'm not sure what it was. I think what he was working on at the time oftentimes became his favorite. He's done so many good ones. My highest recommendations, probably in order, would be Sodge Camp, Drow, Giants.
I'm just excited to know how to finally pronounce that. Because I always called it Tuscojump.
Sodge Camp. That's Sodge Camp.
Yes, you've answered that for a lot of people. I never knew. I never knew how.
Oh man, WG4. So was it S4 is Sodge Camp, right? Is that correct? S4, and then WG4 is the tie into that, and that's the Lost Temple of Thrisden, I believe. I played that one as a side adventure when I was going through Sodge Camp. Again, that was really, really good. So I really enjoy those ones. For me, it's a clear favorite. It's probably because I was 13 or something like that, and I was spending a whole bunch of time with my dad playing games. So that you don't get much better than that, right?
When you play them, how big was the group, and who'd you play with?
Sure. So that varied a bunch. I played some of it solo because I was there every day. My brothers, I'm the youngest, so my brothers and sisters were grown and out of the house. But funny enough, My sister Heidi's 6 years older than me. So I was in junior high school. She was in high school. She had like a boyfriend who would come over. His name was Jerry Savage. We call him Sonny. I still know him today. And they went on a couple dates, but remained friends. It just wasn't a thing, right, for them. But he would come and pick her up and see us playing D&D in the living room and kind of peer in and say, "Hi, Mr. Gygax, nice to see you." And then they'd go out. So when they were no longer dating, a couple of weeks later, whatever, he came in and he said, "Excuse me, Mr. Gygax, would you have room in your game? I'd like to join." And so Sonny, or Jerry now, but Sonny Savage played a fighter named Urav the Savage. So Urav was there, and he brought a couple of his friends with him, Richard Kuntz and David Kuntz, I think, who are cousins of Rob Kuntz, distant cousins, like second or third cousins. Turns out they're related. Jim Ward would sometimes be there. Francois Marcelo Freudeval, who was the French kind of distributor, was in the U.S. for a while, so he was there. And sometimes a few other people would float in and out. But the steady crew was the three high school lads, myself, and I believe Jim Ward made several of those as well.
So, is there an unfinished project that your of your father's that you would like to see to completion?
Yeah, absolutely. This is an easy and clear one. Before my father passed away, he knew he was sick. He knew he didn't have much time, months or a year left, and he sat me down and he spoke to me and said, I want to get my home dungeon completed. So Castle Zagging. He was working with the folks at Trollord Games to do that, and they had the first the upper works out in Igsburg, and he planned about 3 more box sets, I think, is what it had been kind of outlined to be. So a lot of work, and it was a great dungeon. And obviously, I played through parts of that dungeon as Melf. It's a very low level Melf. And did some adventuring down there, which is where I got my Cloak of Displacement that I lost. That was so precious that I lost in Saj Camp. And that's the big one. He also said that he wanted to get a board game that he loved called King of England, King of France done. Not a catchy name, not a very popular subject, but it's the war between England and France and kind of fighting over the lowlands and Savoy and who's gonna get that. So I have worked hard for several years to be able to kind of get the opportunity to do that. I think we're on the verge of being able to do that, and hopefully we'll hear some announcements from the estate and Trollord soon, confirming that Castle Zagged will be going forward, and that'll be a project that we can look forward to seeing perhaps as a Kickstarter as early as the end of this year, and certainly into the next couple of years. So I'm very, very excited about that.
So am I.
Alphinius, you have a project that Luke and I are working on with you together. You want to talk about it?
I would love to. So I don't know if you remember, Luke. We had this first conversation, right? And in the world of Xayafei, I put a place just in the edge of a mountain to honor your dad. And I told you this story called Gygax. And Luke and I started talking, and I said, what if we did something to honor your dad in this place called Gygax, and we could make it funny and be lampoony and have a lot of Easter eggs in there. And the next thing you know, the tomb of Gygax was born. And so we've been working on this, 7 months, 8 months, something like that. Yes.
Yeah, it's been a while. We were like, well, and then there was always a little something. And honestly, I think it's all worked out for the best. And I think we've got great timing going with this one. And it is exciting as well. And my dad would probably enjoy something like this because for those of you who don't know, my dad loved puns, wordplay. Some people would say bad jokes. So he got a lot of enjoyment out of making long jokes with terrible punchlines, like 10-minute setups for a terrible pun punchline. And if you groaned, that gave him all the more enjoyment. So lampoony things and silly stuff is definitely in line with the way to honor my father.
Yes, and we'll have a campaign that wraps around it in the whole area that is there, and this tomb of Gygax, honestly, I mean, it for me as a fanboy. You know, I've been playing. Dan, you and I've had these conversations. I've been playing this game since, you know, in the '70s. I'm 62 years old, and still as enthusiastic about it as I've ever been. And that's all thanks to your dad, Luke. You know, and a few other wonderful creators as well. But goodness gracious, to be able to make something like this, and be able to do it with you, Luke, is a truly a pleasure. But also, we have many legends from the game that are actually starring as non-player characters in the game. I can't wait for people to see it. Dan, I think you're going to play a little part in there. Yes.
I'm going to be an NPC.
Yes, you are, and we even have the entire Gygax family. Yes, Luke.
That's right. Yeah, we've got my wife and children and myself in there. The portraits look great. My daughters were really thrilled with those and are excited about it. And I mean, part of the wonderful legacy that my father left me in through GaryCon is that I've gotten to make friends with all sorts of creative folk from really across the timeline now, but certainly in the formative years. You know, guys that I knew when I was a boy, I've now formed, you know, adult friendships with and gotten to know as people, you know, Tim Kask and Mike Carr and even, you know, it's been great to reconnect with Zeb Cook and you know, Ed Greenwood and people like that, Errol Otis, and even being able to invite them to participate in a project like this and really get appreciation and recognition for the great work they did and so much fun, you know, that they gave to millions of people, you know, all those years ago when D&D was brand new and revolutionary.
And all us poor nerds had to hide in the basements because we had beat up if anybody knew we were playing Dungeons and Dragons. It's
such a different world that younger players don't really get that. So it's important for them to see some of that historical stuff. Because I tell you what, I look back at things like the Satanic Panic, and it's hard to believe that was real. But then I go, yeah, I was alive for that, and when it was real, you know. And people, when they would call you a nerd, they didn't mean it in like, oh, you're such a nerd. They were like nerd, like Revenge of the Nerds kind of nerd, you know. It was not. It was a pejorative.
Yeah, but Luke, I tell you, I got so hooked, you know, and we played the white box, right? We're playing the white box, and then this advanced Dungeons and Dragons books come out, right? And you're like, oh my gosh, what is this? You know, and you're going through it, and there's all these new things and new spells and character classes and all of this stuff, and it's like this revolution, right? And all of a sudden, you're just enthralled. We played 2-3 times a week through high school and college. I mean, it just was that big of a deal to us. And your dad made something really, really special. So I can't wait. This Kickstarter is coming in February, and I think people are going to absolutely love the Tomb of Gygax. I think they're going to love it.
Well, thanks so much, Alphinius and Luke, for joining us today, and Luke clearing up those misconceptions. And I'd like to thank you. Your dad has given me and my friends so many hours of enjoyment around the gaming table, and we honor his contributions to the hobby. We wouldn't be here without him.
Yeah, thank you. It's such an honor to be here, and that's I'm very proud of that legacy. And you know, the only things I wish for is that my dad were still here to see how many millions of people are still playing this game 50 years later, and it's still powerful, it's still impactful, it's still, you know, positively influencing people's lives. What a wonderful legacy, and it's something I know that he'd be blown away about.
Thanks again to Luke and Alphinius for making this video possible. You can back the Tomb of Gygax at the link below. Also below, you'll find links to Dungeoncraft Patreon, where you can get access to tons of bonus content. Thanks for watching. Until the next time, may all your rolls be 20s.
Deathbringer again, sending a 10-year-old to the Tomb of Horrors. That's 70s parenting. When I was a child, Tomb of Horrors was my favorite bedtime story. Good night, Tomb. Good night, Doom. Good night, Devilface in the very first room. For more parenting tips, click on the Demon Tailor next.